honestly, if there's anybody in the world whose opinion I value as my view,
It's him.
As my ability as a podcaster, it's him. Like if he told me you're a bad podcaster, I would just stop doing it completely. Because I did, like I believe you. You're probably right about that. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Moving the Goalposts. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgasen. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Nick at the other Nick at N Morgasen Radio. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow this podcast across social media at MTGP ETB. And you can watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. That helps us out a lot. And this show is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. All right. So there's not a lot to get to because it's the 4th of July, but we do have this Rockets 7-team trade. This is the first 7-team trade in history. And outside of Clint Capella and Kevin Durant, it's all a bunch of no names, it looks like. I mean, the only reason this trade is even relevant at all is A, because it's July, and B, because it's the first 7-team trade in history, but it's all a bunch of no names, cash, draft picks.
Yeah. It's one of those trades that makes you scratch your head because there was a lot of sources, including Shams and all the ESPN NBA insiders, because they have nothing else to do on July 4th. And it was weird because even outside of ESPN, everyone was, oh my God, it's going to be this huge trade. There's 7 teams in it. It's a record. We've never had 7 teams. Like, are we going to see some huge names go back and forth? And I'm like, all right, I said as soon as I heard 7 teams, I said, this is all just sign and trade nonsense to make pieces fit on a bunch of different teams. And the Rockets, which made a killing in NBA free agency, like they were on the ball, quite literally. So you knew that those contracts and all that money they spent, there was no way that they were going to be able to afford the amount of money they spent in NBA free agency. So they had to do sign and trades to clear salary cap space to have the ability to get all these people on the roster. So that's really what this trade is. And when I look at the rest, the Kevin Durant situation was going to be a sign and trade. I had a feeling because Phoenix wanted something back in return. So they are the winners, I guess, technically, of this 7-team deal, if you really want to look at it, because they got Jalen Green, who I think is a really good young player. I just think that he wasn't given enough time in Houston to really earn his spot on the team. Dylan Brooks, I could care less about. To be honest, if they sent him to the Wandong Tigers in Japan, I could care less.
There's a really good chance he'll end up playing on that team eventually and starting fights. And
yeah. But
I mean, outside of Kevin Durant and Clint Capella, the other 2 players that were not no names were Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. I mean, do you think it's possible, though, that like this might look like another, and I'm not saying I believe that this will happen, but don't you think that like there is the possibility where this is like a Clippers or a Kings trade situation where they trade, like the Rockets trading Jalen Green, and that ends up blowing up in their face? I mean, Kevin Durant, it does remind me of that a little bit. I'm not saying Jalen Green is going to be what SGA is or what Tyrese Halliburton is, but you never know because like they weren't SGA and Tyrese Halliburton were not the players that we know of that we know them as now at the time. Nobody really knew. Like, it is certainly possible that the Rockets could have really fumbled with this. I mean, Jalen Green is like, 23? We don't really know what he's capable of yet. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad move. I'm just saying that there really is a possibility if you think about it.
The Rockets needed to make a choice because they had a bunch of young guys on the roster. They had to get signed. Jabari Smith Jr., I think, was another guy on the roster who was a really nice young player. They signed him to, I think, a rookie max extension for a lot of money. They had to sign some guys, but because of this first apron, second apron rule that's now involved in the NBA, you can't just go over the salary cap and sign people unless it's your own players, which is a different scenario that's involved. But excuse me, the situation with the Rockets is they had to make a choice and they wanted to get better. Now, if you want to put all the question marks up and say, is Kevin Durant really the person you want leading your squad? And is he going to help you win a title? That's a whole different scenario.
No, but I think you're more likely to win a title with Kevin Durant leading your squad than you are with Jalen Green leading your squad.
The question I'm going to ask you that I've asked a bunch of guys already. So you finished as the number 2 overall seed in the Western Conference. The plan is, or I should say the plan is, the goal by adding Kevin Durant is that you have to go way further than the 2nd seed, and you got to win a few playoff rounds by bringing Kevin Durant in.
Okay, yes, but I don't think anybody cares about seeding. What matters is how far you go in the playoffs, and they lost in the first round.
If you're a first overall seed, that makes a difference if you win the conference.
You're right. It makes it I don't disagree. Okay, let's put it this way. I view seeding in the playoffs, in any sport for that matter, the same way I view like a college degree. Like a college degree is not the inherent accomplishment. It's there to help you in your future. That's essentially what it is with the draft pick. Like if you can make $1 million without a college degree, you're not going to get a college degree. It's the same thing in the playoffs. What matters is how far you go. And the seeding doesn't always represent who the best teams are when the playoffs come around.
I would say from the standpoint you're talking about, technically a seed doesn't matter. But if you're the 1 through 4 seeds, it makes a difference because you're going to get at least one home series over another team. So I think it does add some value being a first through 3 seed than any other in the conference. But you're right. In some instances, teams are going to get lucky and they're going to win. I mean, heck, Golden State won a title as an 8 seed, for crying out loud. I mean, so obviously there has to be some luck involved. That's any sport, any professional sport.
But it's not even just luck. It's just that, first of all, it's a long season. It goes from the regular season starts, and it seems to be starting even earlier and earlier now. It starts usually before Halloween. It's like the MLB playoffs aren't even over by the time basketball season starts.
Clashing,
Yeah, and then in April, and then it's like almost 6 months. It's about 6 months when the playoffs finally start. I mean, a lot like teams aren't exactly the same. They all do change drastically. I mean, even if you just include, even if you just look at injuries and maybe trades that happen in the middle of the season, like that's going to change a lot, which is why the seeding is not always the best measure of who the best teams are. I've seen 1 seeds in both conferences that are not the best team in the conference. I look at the Atlanta Hawks that one year, the Celtics. There were a lot of teams when the Cavs were far and away the best team in the East, and they were the 2 seed.
I mean, you could say the same thing about the Cavs, who had all their injuries going into their round, losing to the Pacers, if you really want an example in that regard. But it does help to be a 1 seed having home court throughout the whole playoffs. You're right about when you see a 3 versus a 6, does it really matter what seed you are as long as you're competitive in that series to win? Yes, in those terms, correct. It's true. But to have more home games is a mitigating factor in some of the competing.
It can. Well, the thing is, it matters a lot when it comes to a game. If you're assuming you're going to a game 7, if the series goes 7 games, that home court advantage matters a lot. But since you're playing best of 7, that's say the series goes 6 games. Both teams are getting equal number of home games and road games. If it goes 5 games, well, the home court advantage, or if it's a sweep, the home court advantage doesn't even really matter anyway. So unless it's a 7-game series, the home court, which could be a big thing, the home court doesn't matter that much. And the thing is that this year, the Timberwolves were a 6 seed, right? And the Rockets were a 2 seed. I know they didn't play each other, but it is very obvious to me that
what about Lakers T-Wolves?
Yeah, that's another one. That's actually that's a better example because I'm making one up, whereas one that actually happened.
I mean, 3 seed versus a 6 ends up winning. But I would say the Lakers, like you said, were a much different team going into the playoffs than they were at the beginning of the year. They had more injuries. LeBron was not as healthy heading into the playoffs.
But they also had Luka, and they didn't have Luka earlier in the year, so it kind of went both ways a little bit. But the point is, here's the thing. I could be wrong, but I think going into that series, the Lakers were favored. I could be wrong.
Yes, but slightly. But yes.
Slightly. Okay. I know for a fact, actually, I don't know for a fact, but I think it's fairly obvious that if the Timberwolves played the Rockets were a 2 seed, Minnesota's a 6 seed, the Timberwolves would have been favored.
I would say so. Yeah.
And in fact, actually, I'm making things up. Why am I making things up? Things that actually happened. The Warriors had to win a play-in game.
Yes.
And they played the Rockets, and they were favored to win the series.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily matter that much. Here's the thing. The Rockets lost in the first round. And by the way, they lost, and Steph Curry wasn't even totally healthy that series. If the Rockets can make it to let's say the Rockets are not, or say a 4 seed next season, and they make it to the Western Conference Finals and lose, that is without question a step up from this season. Who cares if they were the 4 seed? They still went further in the playoffs, and that's really what matters. That's what the fans and that's what everybody cares about.
But I think the expectations are enormous now with Kevin Durant on the roster, which, by the way, I think people need to stop putting all these expectations on Kevin Durant teams, knowing that they're most likely not going to win titles. Every
team, though, is most likely not going to win a title, unless you're talking about like Oklahoma City next year is the most likely to win a title, and even they're most likely not going to win. So I agree with you on that. I will have to say I agree.
Because I'm tired of hearing, oh, well, Kevin Durant's on the Houston Rockets. On paper, they should be the best team in the NBA. No, they're not. They are absolutely not.
Hold on. Are people really saying that?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like people, I don't know, but it seems like the expectations are not comparable to when, say, Durant went to Brooklyn or Golden State.
I heard Kendrick Perkins say on NBA Today that with Kevin Durant in Houston, on paper, they could win a title.
Well,
and I said, are you kidding me?
Okay. In fairness, first of all, that's Kendrick Perkins. He is a little bit out of left field with most of his opinions. He's not really a mainstream person. He's like, he's known for having a lot of weird takes. But I agree with him on some level that on paper, you can argue they could win a championship. It doesn't mean they will.
You know what they say about on paper, right?
Right. It doesn't matter. But like, you're right. On paper, by the way, there's a lot of teams that on paper could win a championship next season. And I think the Rockets could be one of them. Doesn't mean it's likely going to happen. I think Golden State could win it. I think, who knows? Even the Lakers, I think, could win a championship next season on paper. It doesn't mean I think it's going to happen necessarily.
You know what they're saying, though? Quickly, I'll say, like, everyone's going to say, oh, well, Houston's going to get more games on TV. Yes, they are going to get more national games on TV because they have Kevin Durant, obviously, because everyone wants to see Kevin Durant. But does more national games on TV doesn't mean better?
No, that not necessarily, although they tend to correlate a little bit. I don't think a team that – okay, here's the thing. I think that if a team has more games on national TV, that means their expectations are probably higher
than
the season before. Doesn't mean they're going to be – it's not that more games on national TV equals better, but it's a pretty good sign that the expectations at least – are that they will be better. And if the expectations are higher, chances are they will be a better team. Doesn't mean they'll have a better record in the regular season. In fact, I think most likely they'll have a worse record in the regular season, but it doesn't matter. That's the point. What matters is what they can do in the postseason. Nobody remembers the Atlanta Hawks for winning 60 games 10 years ago.
No, I remember.
It doesn't matter that they won 60 games. They couldn't do it in the playoffs. They beat the Nets in 6 games, the stinky Nets. And they were lucky that the Wizards weren't healthy, that John Wall got injured, and that's why they were able to beat the Wizards. It doesn't matter. That's the point I'm making. It doesn't matter what their record is in the regular season or their seeding. What matters is where they go in the postseason when it really counts. Does it matter? Do people talk about the Lakers being a 3 seed? Nobody cares.
People just want to see the Lakers win. Now, I'll just go on the record, and I think Kevin Durant is going to get hurt and miss a short period of time at some point because he always does.
Probably.
So that's a problem because they're putting all this pressure on Kevin Durant to lead. And if he's out for 2 to 3 weeks, what the heck happens to the offense when Kevin Durant's out?
That's a fair point, and I think that'll hurt the Rockets in the regular season. It also matters when he gets injured, and that's a whole Russian roulette type of thing. You're
Agreed.
just like, you never know when it might happen. But here's my thing, and I am very much in favor of teams being more aggressive with these types of moves. And no matter what move you make, there will always be the possibility of something catastrophic happening. I mean, like you look at the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, look at what happened there. And my view, and even though that's what ended up happening, I don't think you can live life that level of cautious and be like, I can't make this move because what if this happens?
That's the what if scenario.
Right. You can't make, as a GM, you can't do your job that way. Like, sure, we can talk about what ifs all we want. What if Kevin Durant gets injured? Like, I don't know. What if the rim falls on his head? Like I don't know. I don't know. Like that all could happen. What matters is the move is, now there are some criticisms. The biggest criticism of the move, I would say, is that the window for winning a championship is smaller because Kevin Durant is aging and he's aging fairly quickly.
It's a win now team.
Right. It's a win now team, which is not always the best scenario to be in, especially in the West right now.
Yeah.
But it's at least more obvious that there is a window. Whereas with Jalen Green as your best player, it's not even obvious that there is a window. I mean, he's much younger than Durant, but it's just like, it's not obvious that you can even win a championship with Jalen Green. And the Rockets probably don't really believe in him that much. He disappeared in the playoffs this year. And that's probably how they viewed it.
Yeah, but you were a 2 seed. Keep that in mind also. You were a 2 seed. You played well. I get that they didn't go far in the playoffs, but I think you're putting a lot of risk involved bringing an aging Kevin Durant in here. And chemistry issues are a problem with Kevin Durant. So,
I get that you're taking a big risk, but like, I think that's generally the side I would want to err on, which is taking the big risk with the big name. Look, I just think that, like, I would rather be an Andrew Luck type of quarterback than say, like, I don't know, an Andy Dalton type of quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather have the quarterback that throws the ball down the field, that sometimes throws interceptions, but I take the guy who wants to. I would take that, like the more aggressive. I'm not saying aggressive is always better, but I prefer the more aggressive moves over the more cautious moves. And I think that's usually what works better in sports and in life. I mean, that really just is better generally than being like cautious with when GMs are like, trying to play it safe all the time. And they probably just don't believe in Jalen Green. Now, they might be wrong about that. I haven't seen Jalen Green play that much throughout his career. He's still fairly new, but like...
Well, now you're putting the Suns in a pickle because of the amount of money that they're now taking in with Jalen Green, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, who's basically an anchor on the Suns roster that they can't get rid of. I read that they're on the hook for like $190 million on those 3 players alone.
Yeah, the Suns, they just can't get anything right.
They can't get out of their own way.
They can't. That team, they can't get anything right.
And Ishbia, who the new ownership trying to figure out, because they're not technically on TV anymore. They're on like a digital channel because they didn't want to deal with the RSN anymore. So it's a whole thing.
I don't know how it works with Arizona and all the Phoenix teams. It's strange to me how they're the only team that's by the way, they're the only Arizona team that's called the Phoenix. Actually, all the other Arizona teams are called Arizona.
That's a good point.
Cardinals, Arizona Diamondbacks, Arizona Coyotes.
You're right. I just realized that.
Phoenix team. I don't know if although they all play in Phoenix. I've never been out there. I've always wondered though, like what the market is like for the Phoenix Suns. Like are they like a super popular team. Like I don't know how good of a sports city Arizona.
I mean, when you had the Steve Nashes back in the day, which was
Yeah.
a Hall of Fame player, Amari Stoudemire before he decided to punch a fire extinguisher in New York. When you had those guys,
they had some good teams.
Sean Marion. I mean, like those were good teams. This is a disaster.
Yeah, but right now, and by the way, you want to talk about like bad expectations. I mean, you want to talk about like firing the head coach. It made a lot more sense with Phoenix than it did with a team like the Knicks. I mean, they didn't even make the playoffs, and they had real expectations with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And yeah, it's just a team that we expected so much more from. We've seen, by the way, I want to point out this, and this should be a segment because it's really a thing with basketball players. It's not a thing with football or baseball players and probably hockey players too, I'm guessing, which is that they're more they're older when they come into the league. Like you don't know baseball or football players, the majority of them, until they're like at least 23 years old or something like that. Whereas in basketball, it's like Clint Capella is 31.
Which is scary.
How is Clint Capella 31? It feels like he's been around forever. He was on the Rockets team 10 years ago.
Yes, I was just going to say that myself, that he's been on the Rockets before, but he was a very young player when he entered the league. A lot of these guys enter the league young, NBA at the top of that list. Well, because they used to not have to go to college, which now, obviously, that rule has changed. Since now, like when you had Jermaine O'Neal entering the league,
don't have to go to college. Some of these guys don't go to college. Some of them play in the G League, or some of them play overseas.
No. I'm saying if you go to college, I think you have to finish 2 years. I think now.
No, it's 1 year.
Or is it one? Right. You have to go at least one semester, which they consider 1 year.
For 1 year at least. And by the way, it's all
a bunch of
BS. A lot of these players are not qualified to be at these colleges. I mean, you look at some of these colleges and it's just like, you look at Georgetown, Duke, and you're just like, I couldn't walk in the building at some of these colleges.
Do you remember way back when they had these dumb classes at what was it? Boeheim. Jim Boeheim got in trouble at Syracuse because he had like these weird fake classes so his athletes could.
You're thinking of UNC.
No,
Boeheim did it too.
Boeheim did it too. He got in trouble for it. Actually, also got suspended, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I wouldn't doubt it, and I also think that the one and done. I think the college rule. I think the rule in basketball is a lot strange. It's very strange. In football, I think it makes a certain amount of sense, but in basketball, it's just different because as an 18-year-old, it's just like this with tennis too. It's like an 18-year-old can compete with the other adults. In baseball, in football, it's just different. In football, like, first of all, football is just too physical of a sport. It's not possible to have an 18 or 19-year-old be mature enough or physically developed enough to compete in the NFL. I mean, it almost doesn't matter that much, but like, because teams would probably stay away from them. But you can't have 18 and 19-year-olds in the NFL, whereas in the NBA, right out of high school, you can compete in the NBA. You're probably going to be the best player, but you can do it. Proof of this is that we've seen it.
You're talking about back in the day when LeBron went right from high school to the NBA. Now there's rules.
Well, did too.
I would say also kids are younger when they start playing basketball than when they start playing football.
Also,
because you really can't play football at a much younger age. Basketball, you can start playing from a younger age because it's not as dangerous.
I mean, even flag football kids start when they're much later in their lives than just baseball or basketball. But I mean, baseball is a little different because there's a whole farm system and things.
Yes,
like that. It's a whole pain in the ass.
Correct.
But in basketball, realistically, I think that you can play in the NBA at the age of 18. I don't think the one and done rule really makes any sense.
Go ask Cooper Fleck.
Right. It doesn't. Cooper Fleck could have played in the NBA last season. So to me, it's just like going through a year of college or overseas or whatever really just doesn't make any sense to me. Whereas in football, it matters a lot more. Anyway, I always thought that rule was stupid. I think guys should be allowed to get drafted out of high school.
Yeah,
but like they were before.
Yeah, but now with all the NILs, like now guys are going to stay later. If you're not at the top of the top, you're going to stay 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, well, but the point is that that's organic and it's being incentivized. It's not the result of a rule that's being enforced.
No, I agree, but I'm saying that it used to be, how quick can I get out of the college so I can get to the pro?
Right.
Now, if you're being incentivized with millions of dollars at times, why leave?
By the way, I think that's a good thing about the NIL. Like, people often like to rag on NIL and things like that. That's a really good thing about NIL, especially for college basketball. It will help undoubtedly. NIL will help college basketball because the best players will be more incentivized to stay in college rather than go pro earlier.
The only thing I didn't like was what happened at the end of the tournament, which is where guys were picking teams that they wanted to transfer to while the tournament was still going on. That I thought was bad.
But that's not an issue with NIL. That's an issue with the transfer portal. That's a little different.
Well, it partially has to do with the NIL because
it has to do with NIL. But the issue with that is not the NIL. It's the transfer portal rules that are causing that. Like, you don't have to touch NIL to fix that problem. All you have to do is make it I don't think the transfer portal should be a thing while the playoffs are still going. That shouldn't start until after.
Well, actually, I would go one step further and say that anybody who's still in the March Madness tournament should be locked out. Every other team that's not in should be allowed to start doing it because they're not in the tournament. You're still in the tournament. You should not be allowed to make any moves at all.
But the problem is that that puts a disadvantage. That puts the players that are in the tournament at a disadvantage.
Right, but you are working hard. You're still in the tournament. You're trying to win.
But the point is, that's not really fair to them. I think it should be the same for everybody. Everybody just.
But then they should just wait until the day after the tournament ends.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I think it should be. Just like in football, I think that's how it should be. Anyway, that's a lot. DeAndre Ayton, by the way, is on the Lakers. It's not a part of the 17 trade, but it's pretty relevant. And I think, did I spell his name wrong? Is it a capital A?
No, you're right.
Oh, it's just DeAndre. It's not a capital A? Okay.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So he is now on the Lakers, and I think this might be. Yeah, you're right. It's no capital A. Interesting.
Yeah. I smell desperation.
But I think it's actually not a bad move for the Lakers because they had. Oh, I didn't capitalize the L. Whatever.
It's fine.
They already took a capital L against the Timberwolves. So it doesn't matter. I think this is a good move. I think it's a good move for the Lakers, and I think it's also really good for DeAndre Ayton, probably even more so than it is for the Lakers. The thing with the Lakers, what were we talking about with the Lakers since February, since they made the trade? They don't have a big man. Now DeAndre Ayton, now they finally kind of have one.
They've screwed up this process really bad. They wanted Brook Lopez. They did not get Brook Lopez, who ended up going to the Clippers.
How is Brook Lopez still in the league?
It's crazy, right?
That guy's still in the league?
I remember when he got drafted, and I remember when he was drafted to the Nets. I still remember that. But they tried to get a big man. They let Dorian Finney-Smith go, who was a really good player, to the Rockets, by the way. That was bad. They should have re-signed him. That should have been on the top of the priority list to bring him back. I don't know what the Lakers are doing right now. I think Rob Pelinka is a terrible GM, if we want me to be really upfront and honest about it. He was an agent turned GM. I mean, well, you could say the same thing about Bob Myers, too, of the Golden State Warriors.
I mean, I like the idea of having an agent turned to GM because they understand what agents are thinking a lot more. So I can kind of understand. It's like, have you ever heard stories of people that were convicted of defrauding companies and then getting hired?
Oh, to kind of stop the fraud
for it because they understand.
Yes,
it. Kind of like that thing.
Oh yeah, you get hackers that help the tech companies.
That's the perfect way to put it. Hackers who end up working like hacker security.
Yes. So my point is this a bad move? No, but DeAndre Ayton is the diva of the NBA. He was in Portland with the Trailblazers. That was a nightmare. Where did he go after that? He was just or was he with the Trailblazers the whole time?
Well, he was with Phoenix for a while.
Oh, right. So he started with Portland, then had an issue there, ended up in Phoenix. Then he said he couldn't get out of his driveway. and he couldn't get to a game or whatever. And like, yet all that nonsense happened. Gets bought out by the Suns.
Yep.
And becomes a free agent. And I did make the connection of the Lakers
Yeah, he
and
was
him.
a Phoenix first and then Trailblazers.
Right. So I made the connection of it. And I said, okay, they need a big man. They don't have one. The Lakers were effed if they didn't get a big man because they struggled. They couldn't rebound. That was a huge issue they had all season. Offensive rebounds, they were getting killed in.
Yeah.
So is it a great move? No. Is it a decent move? Yes, because they need a big man. But he's got to get out of being a diva. He's got the reputation of being a diva.
Yeah, he does. Although I don't think that and that's an issue. I don't disagree. It's also worth noting that how big of a diva guys are. First of all, it changes with maturity. Like we were just saying, he entered the league. He's a little older now than his diva days. So, you can develop and become less of a diva or become less crazy. You look at somebody like Kyrie Irving, who was crazy for a huge chunk of his career and a huge diva and a huge pain in the ass. And he's not so much anymore with Dallas.
Yeah, but he won a title at least.
All right. I know, but it's not the point. He won. Yes, he did, but that's kind of besides the point. The point I'm making is he kind of matured and he was in a more stable situation, and now he's not as much of a diva as he once was.
No, I get that, but the point I'm trying to make is because he was a diva of his whole career because he couldn't win anything and all that nonsense goes. LeBron comes back to Cleveland, they win a title, all that nonsense.
But he became more of a diva after he won his first championship.
Okay, but the difference is he can say, I have a ring on my hand, as opposed to DeAndre Ayton, who's got nothing and has been a headache in all the stops he's been to. And he can't be a headache with the Lakers. If he's a headache with the Lakers, he's out.
I get that, but I think he's less likely to be a headache with the Lakers than if he were to go to like a clown show organization. And the Lakers are, they're not the best run team, but you know what? He's playing with 2 top 10 players in the NBA right now. Luka is, not the best player in the NBA, but one of the 5 best players in the NBA. Nobody really argues that. And he's in a much better situation. And he's going to be in a much better situation than he was with Phoenix or in Portland. So it might like
a veteran status type player, kind of.
Yeah. And it's just not him, but like he's playing with LeBron and he's playing with Luka. And I also think LeBron is a very good sort of like leader and disciplinarian in a sense. Like he gets a lot. Like people talk about coaches getting a lot out of their players. LeBron is actually really, really good with that. Like LeBron gets all of these sort of like mediocre players huge contracts. Like he was able to, like, he makes his teammates better more than hardly anybody else does. And it's like, if you look at the only player LeBron wasn't legitimately able to make substantially better was Westbrook. He was like the only one.
No one can make Westbrook better. No one. I'll give you an example. Tristan Thompson, who he got a huge contract for in Cleveland. Yep. And what has Tristan Thompson done besides have kids with Khloe Kardashian off the court?
Yeah, exactly. So like LeBron gets so much out of his teammates that like I think that will help a whole lot. Now, it might be LeBron's last season on the Lakers for all we know, but it's just like, I think that will make a really big difference. And here's the thing, in the East and the West, for different reasons, it's sort of a crapshoot what ends up happening. I mean, like we were just talking about how the seeding was almost completely random. Like that's what it looked like when it looked like what actually happened. In the East, it's like, first of all, next season, no Tatum, no Halliburton, and we don't know about Cleveland. It's like the East, anybody can make a run because we just don't know who's going to get hot, who's really that good. The West, it's like for the opposite reasons where there's all sorts of talented teams and so many of them are good and you just never know how the matchups are going to work out. And it's the same thing. Like who can come out of the West? We don't know. Like, I mean, it's similar. So I think that in the NBA right now, small moves that are not blockbuster moves, that are not great moves, but are just good moves, I think can make a really big difference for these teams. And I think that could be the case with the Lakers. I think that could be the case for Orlando getting Desmond Bane, even though he's the arms of a T-Rex. I think that could really make it pretty. I really think all those moves really could matter a whole lot.
I mean, you also had the Dame Lillard move getting waived by Milwaukee, which I think eventually was going to happen. That he was going to want out of there anyway because that team's going nowhere. Them picking up Miles Turner in Milwaukee, which shocked me to no end. That the Pacers didn't even tender him a contract, which was outrageous. And if you saw Tyrese Halliburton react on social media after that move happened, he basically said, "Are you kidding me?" After that move happened, I mean, so. I don't know what you do in that scenario. And who knows if Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee either.
He might not want to. He might not have liked that move. And who knows? I mean, look, there are some athletes that make it, and usually they're American, that make it very obvious when they're unhappy.
Yes.
In different ways. Like Kevin Durant tends to do it on social media. Kawhi Leonard did it by disappearing. Interesting. We're like, where's Kawhi Leonard? He could be in a cave in Afghanistan for all we know. Like, that's what happened when he was with the Spurs. But, like, I feel like international players, like European players, usually don't do that. They're usually a lot more on the down low about what they're thinking. And they wouldn't really give you a very clear answer. They don't wear their emotions on their sleeves nearly as much. And Giannis certainly fits that description. And we don't really know what he's thinking or where he wants to go. Like, he did that Ask Me Anything on Twitter, and he said he likes playing on the road in New York. But that doesn't really tell you.
That was
anything.
dumb.
But, like, that doesn't tell you anything because it just means he likes to go to New York. It doesn't mean he wants to play there.
Ask Melo about that.
Right. Like, you can want to go places on the road. I would like to go to – I like going to Vegas. I like going to Atlantic City.
You don't want to live there.
I would never live in either of those places, especially Atlantic City. So liking to go places on the road doesn't mean you actually want to live there and play there.
It just means you like the city.
Right. That's it. And it just is so unclear what Giannis wants. And it's certainly possible he wants to stay in Milwaukee because he's been there for so long, but it certainly is possible he might want to make a change. It just is not clear what he wants. It really is not clear. I think that one day it's just going to hit us like a ton of bricks.
Agreed.
If there is a trade.
My gut is I think he's not going to be there at some point. I think he's going to end up on another big team somewhere.
I hope you're right.
I think New York is still in there, even though I don't know if it's going to happen. But I could see New York being in there. I heard a ridiculous rumor that LeBron might want to end up in New York for his final season, which I don't think is going to happen either. But
Mike Brown used to be his coach.
I know that was he was the first coach that kind of got the LeBron boot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, so he might want to do that, and knowing LeBron, I think that he wants to handpick coaching staffs, or in a sense, or at least
he's the GM.
Right, he wants to kind of be a GM. If LeBron would be a Knick his final season, I mean, I would actually like to see that.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I'm not saying it will. I mean, by the way, I have no reason to believe that that's even true.
He's avoided the Knicks his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he would want to be a Knick his final season. And that could be true. I just don't believe that that's true. I mean, that would be if LeBron was on the Knicks, that would be the basketball equivalent of Willie Mays being on the Mets. That's essentially what it would be. Like when Willie Mays played on the Mets.
Yeah, but that's actually playing for the Mets, though.
Right, but LeBron would be playing on the Knicks.
I mean, yes. I mean, but we've heard that rumor forever. Oh, LeBron could end up in New York with the Knicks.
What I'm saying is that if LeBron were to go to the Knicks, that would be like when Willie Mays was on the Mets. That's what it would be the equivalent of, the basketball equivalent of. That's the point I'm making. Like way past his prime, very old, and then just played on the team.
Yeah.
That's essentially the point. Now, the Knicks, I talked about this a bit on Leftovers, I think are a huge clown show right now. I mean, just firing Thibodeau to then hire Mike Brown, I mean, who is probably their seventh choice.
God.
Also, I do want to point this out. And this is not even so much about the Knicks. It's not even important, but it just is an observation. If Tom Thibodeau was the head coach of the Pacers, he would have been blamed for Tyrese Halliburton's injury.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They would have said he's playing him too much,
Yeah.
and that's why you're getting injured. That's what they would. I know for a fact. I guarantee you that would have been the narrative.
Oh, that's so true.
You're getting injured is because of this.
If you didn't play 7 guys, they'd be healthy.
Yeah, but let's. All right. Well, when your roster only consists of 7 guys, what are you going to do? You can't land up playing with no wings. It's freaking ridiculous. I do want to talk a little bit about Wimbledon. My pick right now, I said this on Leftovers. My pick is still Alcaraz to win it all. Coco Gauff ended up losing in an earlier round.
First round.
I like the thing is, and Djokovic is third in the he's third in the DraftKings odds to win it all. And it's actually not, it's the fourth is not even close. At the age of 37 or 38. Yeah, 38. He's become like, he's almost like the Tom Brady of tennis.
He is an unbelievable physical shape, even though he's been hurt quite a few times over the past couple of years. And he's had surgeries like Nadal. Like Nadal was in incredible shape, and then he just broke down and had a million injuries, and he couldn't run anymore.
They're both in really good physical shape. The problem is with Nadal is that like his game, he's almost like, if you were to put this in football terms, I would say Nadal is like Aaron Rodgers and Djokovic is like Brady, where like his style of play is much more durable than Nadal's, who is he's very like his style of play beats up your body a lot more to the point where like, especially on hard courts. And that's an issue for a tennis player because a huge portion of the season is hard courts. And Nadal actually like toned down how often he was playing on hard courts throughout his career because it beat up his body so much.
Well, technically, and this is me being a tennis nerd here, but technically there's only one technical hard court surface throughout the full season, which is the U.S. Open. Because technically,
Australian Open is hard court too.
Technically the Australian Open is like it's not clay, but it's like a sand-ish type surface.
No. It's not exactly the same type of hard court as the U.S. Open.
Right.
The U.S. Open, from my understanding, is faster moving.
Yes.
It's a faster moving surface than the Australian Open.
Yeah.
But it's all hard court. It's not a clay court or a grass court. It still is hard court. And the point I'm making is that like that was always an issue for Nadal playing on hard courts.
Well, something that bothered me a ton, and I started seeing this like 7-8 years ago, guys were sliding on hard courts.
Yeah.
Which was never a thing, ever. Now, you see the younger players today, they're sliding on hard courts. What do you think is going to happen to your legs and the bottom of your feet?
Yeah. That's obviously, And, I guess for a player like Nadal, the hard court surface, I mean, his weakest surface is probably actually grass. And that's usually how it works.
I would say no, because you can still slide on grass courts.
No. I'm saying Nadal's weakest surface was grass, is what I'm saying.
You mean just overall?
Just overall, his weakest. Yeah. And that's how the order works. Usually, clay court players are weakest on grass, and grass court players are weakest on clay, and hard court is usually in the middle.
You know who I think the best like neutral player was? I think was Roger Federer. I think even though he was his best tournament was Wimbledon. That was his best tournament. But, and for a while, it took him a long time to conquer the French Open. But he was not weak at the French Open. He could still play.
It wasn't like Sampras. Sampras couldn't even make the finals of the French Open.
Well, Roger didn't make the final for a long time.
But part of that reason was because he was in the same era as Nadal. That had a lot to do with it also. I mean, in terms of the best tennis player, I mean, first of all, I don't even know if there's much of an argument anymore. But like, can we all agree that that Djokovic is the GOAT? I mean, he has 24 titles now. That's 2 more than Nadal, 4 more than Federer, and he still has more left in him. He might win more.
Right, but would you say that the differencing of the ages kind of affects who the all-time is? Because in my opinion, I still think Roger is the best neutral player across all the surfaces. I would say Djokovic was more durable in his career than Roger was.
Federer was pretty durable too. Like the thing is that Djokovic is a better better clay court player than Federer was.
Yes, not even a question.
A better hard court player.
Well, his best service was the Australian Open.
Yeah,
was because he won like 9 or 10 of those at least.
He's the best hard court player ever. I don't even know if there's any dispute about that. And he's not as good as Roger was on grass.
No,
but he's really close. He has 7 Wimbledons. Federer has 8, so he's not that far off.
But at Roger's peak, no one could beat him at Wimbledon at all.
Well, but you know what? At Djokovic's peak, nobody could beat him on hard courts.
No, I agree with you. That's why I said the Australian Open. He was, I think he won like 4 or 5 in a row at one point at the Australian Open. Like he was just mowing everybody down at the Australian Open.
Yeah. So that's why I mean, Sinner is great, but he only wins on hard courts. He's never won on grass. He's never won on clay. So I don't have as much faith in him to win at all.
He's also got a steroid allegation on his plate too, which
that too. And that's always strange because we see that in tennis sometimes. Where it's like it seems like in tennis,
Maria Sharapova.
But I mean, like in tennis, when things like that happen, it's like it seems like a very harsh punishment, and it's kind of rare. It doesn't happen a lot. Whereas in baseball, not as much anymore, but it happened. Like it's historically happened a lot more often.
Yeah, but it's different because in tennis, you can only hurt yourself in tennis, which that's why it feels worse when you get caught doing something in tennis because you're screwing yourself and nobody else.
But it wasn't like it was a band. It wasn't a steroid. It was like a band. By the way, I don't think actual steroids that baseball players took would even help you in tennis. Like I have some doubts about that. Tennis is not like it. You're not trying to hit home runs or like baseball. It's like if you're a pitcher and you can throw really fast, or a hitter and you want to hit the ball really far, steroids help you.
Well,
it's not really the case.
I would say HGH helps any athlete because it's recovery.
That's true. Some types of steroids could. I don't think all of them.
I mean, Maria Sharapova threw her career away almost because of that whole situation when she got caught. She was now. Let me be clear. She wasn't the greatest of all time, but she was playing at a good clip. Eventually, when she found her stroke, and then she gets caught, she gets banned for a year. Her career's basically over. Everybody in the locker room hated her as an individual, and that was it.
Yeah.
So don't do steroids in tennis.
Yeah, or really at all, unless you want to be a professional bodybuilder. And even if you do, as a professional bodybuilder, you're probably harming your health quite a lot.
That's for sure.
Moving the Goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. I do want to talk about some broadcasting news. Colin Cowherd got inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him. He should have been inducted sooner, probably.
Yes.
I guess it's not like in baseball where you have to be retired for 5 years before you get inducted in. By the way, I'm in favor in baseball in the Hall of Fame. I think active players should be allowed to get in. Can a player really like ruin their career enough to the point where while they're playing to the point where they play themselves out of the Hall of Fame?
Unless they Brett Favre themselves.
But Brett Favre didn't even do that. He was a good
No, but player. I'm saying like where you retire, you come back, you retire, you come back.
So anyway,
this is well deserved, by the way. I want to say
absolutely well deserved.
By the way, just for disclaimer's sake, we are two of the biggest Colin Cowherd fans when it comes to this business. I grew up on Colin when he was at ESPN and all that stuff. I have his 2 books, which I've read. This guy, he's different than everybody, and that's why he deserves his spot in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like there are very few people in commentary space that really know their role. And what I mean by know their role is say something interesting. Well, most people on television don't say things, or on podcasts or on radio, don't say things that are particularly interesting.
Or they say things just because it's trending or it's in news. But he talked about this all the time when he does his show, where sometimes you do things for entertainment value because that's what gets the views or the watches. It's not always about 100% facts and authenticity when you're doing a story. Does it help? Yes, you want to make sure you're factually accurate when you're talking, but I love when he comes up with these scenarios and like these different things that
These
could
analogies.
happen, and then people like say, "Well, Colin said this." Okay, he got you to pull it.
But his analogies usually make sense.
Yes,
And they make sense to, you have to understand that, like, not everybody, what I think people have to understand is, and I think he understands this, is that not everybody is a sports fans like we are. Not
Right.
everybody is. And sometimes the things that he talks about and the things that he says, even if somebody who's not a sports fan that might not completely understand what it is, there's a good chance they will be compelled to listen to what he actually has to say. Which is why he's so good at it. I mean, that's exactly what good good show hosts do, is that, like, you put it in a way that will be, like, I guess, digestible. You put your takes that are digestible to the average person.
I mean, there's certain things, because I'm actually looking at the list of some controversial things he said before.
Yeah, they all have that, though.
No, but I understand a lot of the things that he did. Like, I don't know if you remember when he crashed the big lead. If you remember that story.
I was confused by that. What exactly was it? He did it on purpose?
He basically directed his listeners to, quote, blow up the sports blog, The Big Lead. By the way, do you want to know what the irony about him in the Big Lead?
Yeah, Jason McIntyre founded it.
He sold it, but it was his site.
Yeah.
How ironic that is later on.
Like, why did he do it? Was he mad, or was he like, just like, oh, what would happen if we blew up a site?
I'm trying to see, because I'm reading some of it. Apparently, it had to do with some negative attention or something. So he just tried to send all the people over there to basically blow up the traffic. But, and then I don't know if you remember, he had critical comments about the death of Sean Taylor also.
Yeah, there was a lot that, because Sean Taylor had like a history.
Yes.
Of, like, although it turned out he was a total victim.
Yes.
It was the same thing with Mike and the Mad Dog. They had a similar type of thing.
I mean, there's another one also. This was right around the time that he was leaving ESPN. Do you remember the comments? The Dominican Republican players, where he basically said, like, they don't have an education, and
some of these comments, I think, were probably taken a little bit out of context.
Agreed. I think he was just giving an opinion. Like, I think his
argument was, like, Dominican, like, baseball players tend to not have great educations, and that probably is true. Baseball players don't really, most of them, at least international baseball players.
But the weird thing about this story is, and I'm reading it again because I forgot about this. Do you remember that Jose Bautista and the MLBPA were irked by the whole situation, that they were basically going to withhold cooperation with ESPN and Fox for their games?
Why Fox, though?
I don't know. They were just basically irked at the media because of Colin's comments. And Major League Baseball also condemned Cowherd for making remarks that they felt were inappropriate, offensive, and completely inconsistent with the values of the game. I hate when people say values of the game.
What does that mean?
What the hell does that mean? But he was already leaving. Like, he was basically out the door at that point, heading to Fox.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
They cut him like 8 or 9 days early because of that. Which, by the way, ESPN is regretting, because they've tried multiple times to get him back at ESPN.
Yeah, and he's gone. I mean, I really like his old stuff at ESPN. I listen to all of his old stuff all the time.
They tried. Now he's got his own podcast network, The Volume, which, by the way, I've looked at valuations. It's like $100 million in valuation. His podcast network.
How does he talk that much? Like, I can't imagine doing a 3-hour radio show every day, and on top of that, doing a podcast. Like, that would drive.
Do you really want to know what the answer to that is, figuratively or literally?
Money.
I mean, he makes a nice sum of money. I don't know what it is, so I don't want to speculate, but he makes a good amount of money for what it does. And I said he's got $100 million valuation plus on The Volume.
He doesn't really talk that much on The Volume podcast. He usually has a guest on, and it's usually reacting to.
He's got huge connections out of all sports because he knows a lot of people. I mean,
honestly, if there's anybody in the world whose opinion I value as my view,
It's him.
As my ability as a podcaster, it's him. Like if he told me you're a bad podcaster, I would just stop doing it completely. Because I feel like I believe you. You're probably right about that.
I like him, like I said, because he's willing to go outside the box. I think you and I are kind of in that same lane of we don't try to be the cookie cutter. Because people used to yell about that to me all the time. You're too outside the box. First of all, that doesn't mean anything to me whatsoever. Because being a cookie cutter broadcaster sucks, in my opinion. Well, you're supposed to do this and this and this. No. Broadcasting is supposed to be creative. Podcasting is supposed to be creative. And that's what Colin is to me, a creative person who doesn't care if he gets yelled at a million times, if he says something that's not like everybody else. And that's the way the business is.
Yeah, and like I said, I generally just don't negative comments don't bother me.
Exactly.
Like you would have to really dig deep to really bother me. Like I read TikTok comments, I approve of all of them almost,
right?
Even the mean ones, I don't care.
I'll give you one last thing also. Sports Nation. If you remember, he was a co-host on Sports Nation. That was such a perfect show for him, in my opinion, because he could just go off on any random funny clip that was in the world of sports.
Yeah.
Him, Michelle Beadle, and Carissa Thompson, which if you really want to talk about Michelle Beadle, that's a whole nother issue.
But not in the Radio Hall of Fame.
No.
I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Michael Kay versus Jamie Campbell. Jamie Campbell, by the way, what is it with Michael Kay? Michael Kay's in a feud all the time.
Well, this one I don't blame him for, though.
But okay. So Jamie Campbell, so there's some audio.
So Jamie Campbell is on the post-game show.
Correct.
For Sportsnet in Canada. So
if the United States and Canada ever go to war, I think this is the closest we're ever going to get to United States and Canada going to war. I don't.
Basically, just to give some context to this, because the audio is not going to make sense unless I give it a little bit of context.
Right.
Is the Yankees went to Toronto, the first and second place teams. Michael Kay said that whatever he said on his radio show about looking at the Pythagorean theorem of numbers. If you know the Michael Kay show, you get that reference partially. But his comments got misconstrued, saying like they can't be a first place team. And Jamie Campbell goes on the post-game show and starts like sounding off like a fan, not a broadcaster, and says a certain Yankee broadcaster is now going to have to say that the Blue Jays are a first place team. And now listen to the audio because this will make sense. So let's listen to the Campbell portion first because you're going to be, this is wild.
We have been asked about the broom relentlessly these last couple of days. So here it is because we just witnessed something that has not been done in the history of the Blue Jays, sweeping all four from the Yankees here in Toronto. First time. And I can think of a certain Yankee broadcaster, in fact, who is going to have to go on his show tomorrow and admit that the Blue Jays are a first-place team because the standings prove it.
Okay, so what exactly was it that he said? He said that based on run differential, the Blue Jays didn't look like a first-place team.
Which, in essence, you can say that because you're looking at the numbers and saying, all right, if you look at this number, it doesn't look like because he was saying the amount of runs didn't make sense that they were scoring. That's plausible. Maybe you're winning in a different way besides scoring offensively. Maybe you're a better pitching and defense team.
I mean, by the way, people say that about football teams. People talk about that with football all the time in a sense. Like people talk about like how, teams win or like losing all these close games or blow everybody out when they win. And like we talked about that with the Jets last year. We talked about that with like USC football. Like we do that all the time in sports. I don't get why it's such a big deal.
But here's the issue because we couldn't show the video side of it, so you're missing part of the context of.
He had a broom.
Yeah, he had a broom, and he takes a broom and throws it at the camera, essentially. Like, oh, we swept them, blah 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 blah. So this irked Michael Kay and a bunch of people in the media. And take a listen, and I'll respond. Look, we're going to have to pause in between this because it's a longer response, but listen to what Michael Kay had to say.
Well, Michael Kay, let's put it this way, is much more old school than this Jamie Campbell guy is, I assume.
Yes.
And the most, like Michael Kay is not really like that. Like, his tone will be very pro-Yankees, like short in a sense, like, he's very pro-Yankees in the sense that like he's sort of rooting for his team, but he's a Yankees broadcaster, and that's normal. I've never seen him do anything like this. The closest thing I've seen Michael Kay to doing something like this was when he was on Yes after Mike Francesa, and he put the Diet Coke in the garbage.
Yeah, but that wasn't more being a fanboy, though. That was more like, and he admitted afterwards that he shouldn't have done that. By the way, also, I think he was just mad at Francesa because he was taking Francesa's spot, and he finally get to say, "Oh, I win now," and symbolizing the Diet Coke in the garbage can.
I thought it was a very lame decision.
Of course.
But anyway, so here's Michael Kay's response.
It's interesting. So what I would say to Jamie is I can easily say the Blue Jays are a first-place team because I'm not a fawning fanboy. I'm a broadcaster, and the bottom line is they are, in fact, a first-place team. Also, the whole narrative has been skewed by people who misinterpret it and didn't hear everything that I said on my radio show. I was talking about the Pythagorean theorem of run differential, which would indicate that the Blue Jays should not have a record as good as they have. In fact, I was complimenting the Blue Jays that they've exceeded the expectations that the numbers would put on them. I never said that run differential is more important than wins and losses. Of course it's not. But baseball perspective, places like that, they take the run differential and they try to figure out exactly what the record would be. And the Blue Jays have exceeded that with their gritty, gutty style of play. And one final thing, it's kind of funny if you think about it. Imagine, Nancy, if Jack Curry was waving a broom on the Yankee postgame show. He would probably be called into the office and shortly fired after that. Now, I love Toronto. It is a cosmopolitan.
All right. So I think that's most of what we need to play.
He's right, by the way. Everything he says is 100% right. From the standpoint of, I've never seen a professional broadcaster take a broom on a...
throw it at the camera. And by the way, obviously, that's entirely rehearsed.
I mean...
That's got to be rehearsed. Like, he had to have said, I'm going to take the broom and I'm going to throw it at the camera. Like that doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Like, that's clearly rehearsed. All these broadcasts are pretty rehearsed when you look at it in that sense.
I mean, he had to go get that approved by the bosses. I'm assuming at Sportsnet.
I would assume so, or maybe he didn't, and they went kind of rogue. You never know.
That's not something I think that would go rogue. Just saying, I don't think he would, because that's a bad look.
Given the fact that he didn't get fired or reprimanded, makes me believe that he got their approval.
What's funny is also, like, I'm seeing on social media, like, oh, they all liked what Jamie Campbell did by going after Michael Kay.
But I'm not the biggest Michael Kay fan, but it doesn't sound like he didn't admit that they were a first place team or said they couldn't be a first place team. He was just pointing out that when you look at their run differential, like, yeah, this doesn't look like a first place team. That's not I don't get why that's such a crazy argument to make. We do that in sports all the time.
Right. Do I think the broom thing, and I'm looking at a video of it on social as they show it, he literally threw it at the lens of the camera, like quite literally, like in front. And
imagine if he had broken the camera.
I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but
it could have happened.
But we've seen people throw things at cameras. But first of all, to make a comment like that and to call out Michael Kay, who's been in the business for a very long time, like, you don't see that very often where other broadcasters call it other broadcasters like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought it was a little much. A lot of the professionals that I know in the business were saying that it was a little much. And I think Michael is right that Jamie misinterpreted some of the comments that were being made.
I would argue probably on purpose.
Why? Because of the Yankee Blue Jay rivalry?
Yeah, I think that, or because he just wanted a headline. I mean, or wanted to trash Michael Kay. Sometimes when people misinterpret what other people are saying, it seems to be on purpose, because I know your comprehension skills are not that bad. Like, sometimes that's what it seems like to me. And by the way, it's happened to both of us when we post clips, especially on TikTok.
Oh my God.
I mean, the same thing happened to me when I talked about when I think I was talking about the Broncos.
Yes.
And the who else made the playoffs? Denver, the two wild card teams. I said the Bengals. I thought, like, the Bengals should have been a playoff team, and it sucks that the Broncos are in the playoffs. The Broncos and Steelers are in the playoffs ahead of the Bengals. And people were making it sound like I was saying that, like, it's wrong that the Bengals are not in the playoffs. Like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, the Bengals probably would have been a better team in the playoffs come this time around than Denver or the Steelers. Like, I wasn't saying it's an injustice that they're not in, but just that, I think I'd rather see Joe Burrow there. Like that's essentially all I said. And people were making it sound like, oh, all you have to do is not lose the game. I get that. I don't give a crap about that. I'm just saying from my standpoint as a fan.
Right. I mean, how many times did I get blown up for saying the Bengals were not going to make the playoffs, even though they didn't make the playoffs?
Yeah,
people were.
But it just drives me crazy when people make it sound like just are so obtuse that they're claiming that you said something that you so obviously didn't say, and I know your comprehension skills are not that bad. Like, I know you're not that stupid.
That's what I'm saying, and that's the point I'm making. I think Jamie Campbell way overreacted and misinterpreted some comments, and I'm like, come on, dude, you're not this stupid. Like, you're not this dumb as a broadcaster. And by the way, don't throw brooms at the camera. Like, please.
I think it's unprofessional.
Like, is that a bit? Because I'd love to know from Sportsnet, like, if they approved that, or if the Blue Jays, because it's really their content that it's happening on, did the Blue Jays approve you throwing a broom at the camera?
Yeah, that's a good question. My question is that Sportsnet? Is that the same channel Don Cherry was on?
I'm not sure.
The hockey guy?
I think you're right. Yeah, actually, yeah. But I don't know. This thing is nuts. Like, grow up. Obviously, he doesn't look old when I look at the clip. I mean, young, but looking at the clip. But you got to know better. Come on.
That is something you can do on, like, a radio show.
Actually, he does look way younger than I thought.
But that's not really a thing you normally see on, like, a sport. Like, I can't even imagine Gary, Keith, and Ron doing that.
Right. I mean, I like the Mets broadcast at times because I think they do a really good job from a broadcasting perspective. I would never expect them to throw a broom. Now, Keith has said some pretty outlandish things over the last week or so.
Yeah.
But I think those are funny, at least. Like, the Blue Jays broadcast, I don't know them well enough, or you probably don't know them well enough because they're in Canada and we don't see the games. I
believe me. I do not watch Blue Jays games ever.
I went to Toronto, I think it was last year, and I was down there and I saw the Yankees play in Toronto. When I tell you, like, some of the fans are a little crazy down there in a good way. Like, they're crazy, but at the same time, I would say there is some crazy fans down there.
Remember that guy who threw a beer at who was it?
Oh, you're talking about... Oh, they did a whole documentary on that.
There was a guy, and it wasn't Jose Batista. Jose Batista was on the Blue Jays. I forget who they were playing.
This was a documentary. I know what you're talking about. I just don't remember.
This was in 2016, I remember, in the playoffs. And it turned out that guy who threw the beer was a journalist.
Yeah. Oh, it was Han-Soon Kim, I think the Orioles outfielder it was thrown at.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
Blue Jays fan throws a beer at Orioles outfielder, I think.
Yeah, that was it.
So, yeah, some of their fans can be a little outlandish, but there are some nice fans too. I got to meet some people down there. But
look, not every fan base can be as well-reasoned and nice as the Mets and Yankees fans, of course.
That's true.
All right, so that's our show this week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgasen. I'll be back next week. See you then.
See you.